are we doing? Good? Yeah, rock on. It is the third day of assembly, and it is absolute pleasure to welcome you to Artec seminars and workshops organized in collaboration with IGDA Future program of IGDA Finland. My name is Natasha Skult, and I will be your host for today, and also share all the other practicalities first before we introduce the first speaker. Most of the presentations will have a pretty much regular structure where we will have presentation and then Q&A, where I will have a mic to come around and give it to you. So you just raise your hand if you have any question or comment, and I'll come and give you a mic, so making sure that everyone can hear the questions. Other than that, if any of the speakers have their own way that they want to do Q&A, possibly during even the presentation, they will say that at the beginning, so then I will make sure to assist throughout the whole talk. So, without further ado, I'm very excited to invite to the stage our first speaker, Joona Gunter from Amazon Web Services, who will talk about a very important topic actually now about Gen AI, which we all know how polarized and how different approaches in the use of it are out there, and especially for the art side. So the talk will be how to actually use generative AI in game dev and how to leverage it in the right way. So with Joona, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Hello. Nice to see everyone. So as said, I'm Joona Gunter. I work as a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. I've been there for 1 year, 11 months, 15 days, something like that, who counts. Before that, I worked as a software engineer on consulting side of things.
Shall we?
I have a very unfinished degree in math and statistics from University of Tampere. Maybe I will finish that one day, but it's not looking too good currently. But before I actually get into the topic, maybe a quick show of hands. How many of you would say you are a technical person? Roughly everyone. So I'll try to calibrate what I talk about in that light.
Before that, the slides are... Yeah.
Okay. Now it looks better. This is the one thing AI won't steal from us. So, what actually is generative artificial intelligence? Marketing told me I have to write it out like this at least once during the presentation, so now I've done that. So, we have all heard about these things for the past year, almost 2 years, I guess, at this point. I've had, due to my job, hundreds of conversations at this point with different Amazon customers about generative AI. I've given at least 30 presentations on the topic to date. And even still, I'm not super confident in answering the question what it is. I mean, it's about using huge neural network-based AI models to generate something, except when it's not about generating something, but that's the name it has been given. You have all seen those, chat-based demos, probably played around with them. You've seen image generation demos, maybe even video now. But at least I've noticed that it tends to maybe oversimplify the thing, because we are talking about huge neural networks with hundreds of billions of parameters, possibly. That means basically tens or hundreds of gigabytes of floating point numbers on a hard disk. And the main reason overall for using neural network type architectures instead of something else is the ability to learn complex relationships between data. And that really is also due for large language models or whatever. And especially one example that's already been done in the world, this is quite old already, is protein folding. So I'm not actually a biologist, I don't understand this, but I asked a friend from university, and apparently the problem is that it's relatively simple to figure out the actual polypeptide chain that makes up a protein. But for how a protein actually functions, also the three-dimensional configuration of that protein matters. And currently, all the science humanity has managed to do at this point, we don't know why and how proteins take the shape they do. The only way currently we know to figure out the shape of a protein is for someone to freeze it and look at it. And it's a very labor-intensive process. So what they did at DeepMind, which is now part of Google, is use the same technology that's now being called generative AI and used it to take the polypeptide chains that make up a protein and predict the three-dimensional shape of it. Basically generate the three-dimensional shape of it based on some condition. And they've, based on this work, open sourced a huge database of structures of proteins way bigger than anything we had before. So this is an actual tangible impact that's literally saving lives. So it's not just about generating text, not about generating images or videos or whatever, but really only your imagination is the limit of what the complex input to complex output could be. Now, we at Amazon don't really think that there's going to be one model that you're going to be using for everything. Borrowing from Lord of the Rings, one model to rule them all. That really different models are good for different things. Simple example, if you need to know Finnish, that really narrows the selection of possible models you could use down. And you really don't want to use the best model that's available. I like to phrase it in a slightly weird way that you are actually looking for the worst possible model you can use. And what that means is you're looking for the smallest model that's able to generate a good enough output to solve your problem. You want to use smaller models because they are cheaper. They're cheaper in terms of latency, and they're cheaper in terms of absolute money it costs to run the models. Then the next obvious question is going to be, do you build something or do you buy something? There's a huge number of new AI startups offering all sorts of AI as a service things. There's of course incumbents in the space like Amazon Web Services also offering a lot of different AI things. But at least the Finnish engineer mindset usually seems to be, we sort of need to build something. And there are definitely cases for both. At Amazon, we usually think that you should be focusing on the thing you are doing. If you're making games, you should focus on making games. Whatever your business is, you should focus on that business and what brings value to that business. If you make games for a living, you probably shouldn't be making AI at the same time. But there are also reasons why, for technical limitations, you would need to build something yourself. I'll try to highlight maybe when you need to consider building something from the Lego bricks yourself. Since I'm here talking, I do need to have a very slight advertisement as well that the AWS platform does offer a lot of different building blocks you can use to build your own solution. From applications that use generative AI to tools you can use to build with generative AI and then actual hardware that you can use to make your own stuff. This is a slide that I've had in almost all the talks I've given in this topic and all the conversations I've had with customers. It's sort of a preface to a story I usually tell about customer support and how generative AI could possibly be used in customer support. And I'm really not talking about replacing customer support agents with bots. I'm yet to meet a single person on the planet who prefers to talk to a bot rather than a human support person. I don't think that's the right path forward. But I'm not going to tell that story today because I don't think it's the most relevant thing for this audience. But actually maybe the main thing here that I want to highlight is that even in this slide myself, I have an AI generated unicorn as a visualization, illustration. I can't draw. There's no way I could make that myself. Someone would have to make it for me, and there's no one, who would waste time making unicorns for my PowerPoint presentations where I work. Maybe where you work, you have a better situation, but it's maybe just a very simple illustration from my everyday work life that has been, I would at least say, improved with the availability of models. The story I would tell about customer support is really there to highlight one single thing. And it's really a problem that I've seen, especially at big enterprise companies, that everyone started looking at this Gen AI thing and they had absolutely no idea what they could use it for. So they started looking for use cases. Okay, they are doing that. Maybe let's explore that and make 100 different proofs of concept. And absolutely not one of them went anywhere. Overall, the way we work at Amazon is we do something called working backwards. It's something we do ourselves, it's something we do with our customers. The idea is very simple. Instead of coming up with a solution you want to use, like generative AI, and then trying to find the problem to use it for, you really should be working the other way around. So you have problems in your thing. You know what those problems are. Those are the things you should be fixing. Generative AI is just a new thing that opens up some new solutions that didn't exist before. Usually it is not the right solution. Even in the AI space, most probably it's not actually the best solution to the thing. Sometimes it's the only solution. And really, if you only take one thing away from a sort of catchy title of how to actually use generative AI, is don't use it where it doesn't actually help. If you're just using it for the sake of using it, it's not gonna go well. It would be true for everything else in your business as well, but I've noticed that these sort of very hyped up technologies are quite prone to being misused. Now, there are a lot of things you could use this technology for, but currently I think the main things, especially in light of game development, is images. There's a huge number of art assets in any given game project. Text, well, that's also probably an art asset, but there's also a huge number of text in games these days. Dialogue, item descriptions, help menus, whatever. And audio, it's also an art asset, but there's sound effects, there's music, there's dialogue, probably also something else that I'm not even thinking about. I have not listed video here because we are, just to be frank, we are not there with the technology yet. With text, images, audio, I could see you doing something useful. With video, probably not yet. This is something I just took off a slide deck we had, that there are starting to be maybe some interesting things with video that you can do, but no, is interpolation more of an image thing than video? I don't know. For images, we had this example of character development. I think the idea is sort of similar to what I had with generating unicorns. That I can't draw, I can't make something. I don't think the right choice is to try and replace artists with AI models and have them generate the art. I would rather use this as a tool that, I have some idea. I want to make the artist really actually understand what I'm trying to do. So why not generate, a few 100 images, select a few ones that actually highlight what I was thinking about, send that over, rather than try to explain whatever I was thinking. Continuing in the vein of illustrations generation, these are a few pictures I made this morning. It uses Stable Diffusion XL and whatever his name is, I just went to Hugging Face. If you're not familiar with Hugging Face, you could say they're like the GitHub of machine learning. Lots of open source models, datasets, and tools available for developing. And he has made this, which I really like, this specific type of art style you can use for image generation. And I made a few illustrations. But then to actually show what can you actually do. So I will try and switch my screen to, okay, this is gonna be hard. One moment, I'll switch my screen mirroring setting. Okay, now I think we can see. So, I don't know if have you ever used AWS in the audience? Maybe just a quick show of hands. Yeah, a few hands. Doesn't really matter for the demo. So, I'm using a service we provide called Amazon Bedrock. It would fall, if you remember that 3-tier diagram I showed, it would fall into the middle. It's an API you can use to call different models and do stuff with them. One example would be, this should be the same prompt or the same seed that was used to generate those character concept arts I had. And if I wanted to do something similar, I can literally just call the API, get an image made. And that's roughly fitting to the description. Why I'm showing this is that these tools are actually there. You can use them. There's a billion different providers you could get the service from, and you can start building with them. But for me, the ability to do something like this is not unique. Not only I can do it live on stage, you could do it, but also every single one of your competitors could do it. It's not like a unique business edge. It's really about how you use it. How do you build on top of this to actually provide value into whatever you are doing? You could go a lot further than this. I'm now jumping, this is basically a GPU-powered machine I have running in the cloud. I don't have a good enough GPU on my laptop otherwise to do this, but for example, generate illustrations for this presentation. Don't really have to care about the specifics of how this works. Basically, I'm using a library from Hugging Face made for using latent diffusion models to generate images, do some magic to load the actual model, and then I can generate illustrations. And just doing this, it's actually pretty fast. I can do 4 illustrations in like 20 seconds, and you can go sort of already get pretty far with these things compared to what they were a year ago, 2 years ago. Why I'm showing this is because next I'm gonna show that you can make it a lot faster. Then I'm gonna show that you can also do text really fast. And then I'll look at the clock, and if there's time, I'll try to do a bit of live coding. Okay, so I generated a few illustrations into this folder. Seems to be a warrior from Skyrim, as was my prompt. But you can do this a lot faster too. So I'm gonna use an optimization layer here. Again, the technical detail doesn't really matter, but I can take that generation time down to roughly 1 second. So if I generate 10 images here, the timer doesn't even show times because it's less than a second, I guess. And what this basically means is that we've come to the point with this technology where it can be real time. And I think especially for game development, that's where it gets interesting. It really does open up use cases that we maybe didn't have before. The same works with text. So I've basically I showed you previously the Bedrock console. It's an API. I made some convenience wrapper for myself, and I can also basically generate text also in real time. In this case, made something up about HAL 9000 and asked it to greet me. You can also, of course, do chat style things. In this case, I don't know, hello world, how are you? And that's pretty fast to generate as well. Now, what could you then actually do? So we have the building blocks. We can do basically images in real time. We can do text in real time. But again, that's not really gonna lift your experience to the next level. So I'll try to switch back to the presentation. So we had a sentence somewhere, something like this, about revolutionizing the player experience. And really 2 things about this piqued my interest. Lifelike NPCs and then sort of dungeon game master type of things. I don't know, do you guys play tabletop role-playing games? At least I try to, but I don't have enough friends, and then it gets really hard when you don't get people to the same table and everything. So I've been interested, could you make a digital experience with this new kind of technology that would be pretty close? I don't know. For lifelike NPCs, I found this very crispy video from Skyrim about Nazim, who always talks to you about the Cloud District. I don't think the audio works, but that doesn't really matter. And I think that's pretty much the current NPC experience in any game that we would be looking at. Basically some preset dialogue options. Yeah, maybe on the newer games they might have a little bit of context awareness, react to some things, but it's, you know, they are definitely computers and not sort of immersive people in the worlds we play in. So I decided that in the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I guess, let's take a problem, in this case boring NPCs. I made myself some of these helper functions, and let's see, could we use this stuff to make NPCs more interesting. So I think that maybe the biggest thing about why these characters don't really seem lifelike is that they don't really properly react to their environment. Like, yeah, we can have some pretty basic parameters of, you know, what's the weather, or did you just murder someone in front of them or something. But really, you know, there's so much going on in these game worlds, and especially I think we people tend to love games where they give us a lot of freedom. I think especially Baldur's Gate 3 was a very recent game where people really enjoyed being able to do weird things just because they could do them. So could we do something about this? I think one thing we could at least do is, you know, because of course we cannot manually create tens of thousands of NPCs in our games to be interesting. We can make a few, we can get actual people to voice them, do things like this. But could we maybe generate more interesting NPCs by at least removing some of the manual human work from it? I don't think this is something we can only leave to the machines. We're gonna need people in it too. But let's, you know, try to generate a description, if I can type, for an NPC. One thing I've noticed about these models, just making demos, playing around with them, is they like to role play. You can usually sort of tell them that, hey, please do this, and usually they oblige. Yep. Okay, how do I... No wonder it didn't look very interesting. Now this is the correct screen. So let's generate an NPC with a name, gender, profession, and some interesting characteristic. In this case, we have Amelia Stormwind, a female elven ranger, age 57. It's a skilled archer and tracker. So let's then just crudely copy and paste this. I'm looking at my red timer there. And then let's put it there. And just to show the very basics of the idea, we could then basically take the same thing and now just use that generated description. And just to show, there's 10 dialogue options I generated from scratch in like 3 minutes. If you actually spend 30 minutes or an afternoon on this, I think you could get significantly farther. So, just because they want to get me off stage, so one thing I would very quickly like you to please do is if you could scan the QR code and there's 2 buttons you need to click. Was this a horrible talk? Was it somewhat enjoyable? Did you actually like what I had to say? Please give me some feedback. And with that, thanks. If you want to be friends on LinkedIn, you can connect with me. We didn't have time for questions. You're free to come find me off stage and we can talk about anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Joona. And as